Chapter 17, Environmental Health and Justice. I probably talk more about environmental health, just to give you general ideas what are the environmental hazards and the threats we should be aware about. And we'll talk a little bit about environmental justice. It is a very heavy topic. I do not have a lot of take-home messages. I only have one for you. That is the low-income minority groups. They bear much more burden than the wealthy people, which is not fair. We'll learn about exposure and all sorts of different hazards, environmental hazards we could be potentially exposed to. And we are going to briefly discuss some of the environmental justice issues, and you know how you equip yourself to be aware of the environmental health challenges in your community. Environmental justice means that no community should be saddled with more environmental burdens and less environmental benefits than any other. So one word I read from this message is treat everybody equal, right? No discrimination. And another definition by US EPA is it's a fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people regardless of race, color, national origin, or income with respect to the development implementation. So here, the message also emphasizes a fair treatment. Unfortunately, when the climate is changing, the low-income and minority communities bear much more burdens. Toxins are substances, the poisonous substances that can cause illness or death. We now have the field of environmental health, which is really a good thing. And that is defined by the WHO as assessment and control of the biological, chemical, and physical factors that affect our well-being. And there are three branches: epidemiology, toxicology, and environmental justice. One example of epidemiology is the distribution and determinants of health-related states and events in specific populations. And here they use Dr. Snow. In 1854 in London, there's prevalent cholera outbreak. So he studied all the water pumps in the city and located a few water pumps that's the super spreaders of cholera. And the toxicology studies negative effects of substances on an organism. And our textbook have very good examples. Those people's making the hats, they found there's neurological problems happening over the years to the workers because they were poisoned by the compounds, the mercury compounds in the process. Environmental justice, this is one example about people protesting, making their neighborhood of the hazardous waste dumping site. This is 1977 in New York State, close to Niagara Falls. And the United States government used federal disaster assistance for the first time to relocate more than 800 Love Canal families. And the GAO office found that 75% of hazardous waste sites in 8 southwestern states were located in poor and minority communities. And also the injustice was seen with those uranium mine workers. They have much higher incidence of lung cancers. It was not addressed until 1990, which is pretty recent. Now, the biological hazards. I think this lecture is about like general introduction of a bunch of information. I apologize, it's not a organized story because I just want you to generally know the hazards you could be potentially exposed to and what's the status of environmental justice. So I spread out the information like a brochure more than a lecture. So the microbes, meaning bacteria, fungi, and viruses, and the pathogen means microorganisms that cause illness or infection. For example, the microorganisms in the yogurt, they are not pathogens because they are good for us and they do not cause illness or infection. So you can see we have a distinguishing line between the benign or beneficial microbes and the harmful microbes. And infectious disease account for 1/4 of the human deaths. The leading cause is the respiratory infection. This is particularly easy to understand during the pandemic of coronavirus. And the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus, kills more than 1 million people already worldwide since it broke out. And the United States, 231K people already died. And if we compare the number here, it's about like the USA cases and the deaths almost account 20% of the worldwide cases and the deaths. And the common cold, flu, and bronchitis, because this is the winter season is coming, so I put this slide here. They affect the very young and the very old. And tuberculosis is a bacterial infection, kills 1 million people per year. That's very infectious. The second cause is diarrheal diseases. And the main reason is the drinking water. In the developing country, it's not sanitary, or they do not have enough clean drinking water or enough water to drink. The diarrhea is the second leading cause of death. Excuse me. The third one is blood-borne pathogens like AIDS and malaria. Remember the DDT we use very extensively all around the world is because malaria. This is transmitted in tropical areas by mosquitoes. So where do these pathogens strike? I need to point out it's more prevalent in low-income countries due to crowding and unsanitary conditions. And air pollution and malnutrition also makes people more vulnerable to infection. Okay, a lot of people in those areas lack clean drinking water. Okay, and in Africa, the malaria case was the most. It has 92% of the deaths due to malaria, and 70% of the AIDS deaths occur in Africa. So the future risks, and it's projected that more people will have more infectious disease, okay, due to global warming and due to overuse of antibiotics. And I want you to read this page in the textbook. It's really interesting if you do not understand what is herd immunity. It's a condition when a large enough part of the population is immune to a pathogen due to inoculation, which indirectly protects people who are not immune. I talked about DDT already, okay, a few chapters earlier, so I'm not going to repeat the story of DDT. People used to think they're really good. See how widely and how popular this pesticide is. But it is hard to break down. It's lingering in the environment for a long time. So today we still suffer from use of DDT. And by Los Angeles coast area, there's a big dumping site. Okay, the scientists only discovered that in the past few years, and there is clear evidence. We are not talking about pounds. We're talking about thousands of tons of DDT were dumped in close to the California coastal areas. So if you have time, you can go to this website, just learn about this. Although DDT is banned long time ago, we still suffer from the exposure because of the inappropriate disposal of those chemicals.